Hello, I'm Kim Gi-hoon from Richgo. I've mentioned a few times about commercial real estate. Recently, this commercial property was almost destroyed in 1 year in the same building. It was traded at a price that has dropped by 40%. Now, let's take a quick look at the related details. So, the small building worth 8 billion won has caused property owners to scream in just 1 year. So that's the story. Last January, a 4-story small building in Seodaemun-gu, Seoul was traded for 8 billion won. But last month, in December 2024, it was valued at 5 billion won. So, the 8 billion won building has dropped by 3 billion won, making it worth 5 billion won. So, to buy a building worth 8 billion won, the tax is almost 5%, which is about 400 million won, right? So that's 8.5 billion won. So they've lost about 3.5 billion won. On top of that, when you add in the brokerage fees and everything else, it's almost like... So that's a loss of 4 billion won, right? 4 billion, it's really quite harsh, isn't it? They just lost 4 billion won in a year. So, the small buildings that were once popular as income-generating real estate are now completely falling into the cold. So now, even in the 2020s, 21st century, during the COVID-19 era, if we were a building owner, we would have called it a swindler. So there was even a term called landlord, because there was a building owner above the creator, but now this landlord has become completely beggar-like. The reason for this is that the number of building owners who cannot even pay their loan interest is increasing, due to the economic recession and the decline in rental yields. So small buildings are now emerging as a completely new issue in the real estate market due to the increase in delinquencies. What's unusual about these things is that there are people around me who own several expensive apartments in buildings, and they've all been auctioned off. All the auctions are happening now. So those who misused leverage during this COVID period are completely crashing right now. I'll show you just how serious the commercial real estate market is right now with some actual data. If you go into Richgo, you can access the auction sales statistics, and you'll be able to see the auction statistics like this. You can view all of this for free. If you go into RichgoTV, I've just selected commercial real estate here. What do you think? The number of auctions is continuously increasing. I've repeatedly mentioned that the number of auctions is bound to increase. As of December, in 2024, the number has exceeded 2,500 cases. So, however, this is the first time in the last 20 years that we've seen over 2,500 cases. There was only one instance in the last 20 years. That was in August 2011. 11 years after the outbreak of Corona. This was during a time when the economy was really bad. So, even though the financial system hasn't collapsed, the situation is much more serious. So, the number of auctions is really increasing right now. So, let's take a look at Seoul. In Seoul, yes, you can see that the number of auctions is increasing. All right, let's take a look at Gangnam and Seocho. Gangnam-gu and Seocho-gu. How about Gangnam and Seocho? Yes, right now, we're seeing the highest number of auctions for commercial real estate since 2009, aren't we? Yes? So right now, auction items for commercial real estate are completely flooding the market. It's pouring in like crazy. So is commercial real estate popular? Then we can understand this through the sales rate and other statistics. Let's take a look at the sales rate here. The sales rate isn't very high. The sales rate right now is, in December, it was around 14%. If 100 commercial properties go up for auction, only 14 of them are being sold. The sales rate is really low, isn't it? So, what is the sales price ratio? If you look at the sales price ratio, historically, it's really at a low level. So, in December, it was almost 53%. What does that mean? It's being traded at a price that's almost half of the appraised value. What does that mean? It's a complete bubble right now compared to the prices of a lot of commercial real estate buildings that are on the market right now. It's completely a bubble. So, as you can see, from the auction market, the commercial real estate market is in a very serious situation right now. And it's not just that. The trading volume has also decreased significantly. So, after COVID, with the domestic economy slowing down, and the expansion of the e-commerce market, investors are completely turning away from commercial real estate. The vacancy rate is also very high. So, as a result, we are now facing an unprecedented trading cliff in the commercial real estate market. Let me show you some data on commercial properties. So, let's go into Richgo Expert and look at the transaction volume data for commercial buildings by year. Wow, looking at this data, I was shocked. Look at this. Do you know what the average transaction volume is? Right now, the average transaction volume over the past 20 years since 2005 is 13,462 cases. This is just for Seoul, just for Seoul, just for Seoul. It means that there were over 10,000 incredible buildings being traded just in Seoul. And the peak was in 2021, during the COVID frenzy when everyone was going crazy. So, what happened after that? In 2022, there were 12,000 cases, 12,000 cases. Then in 2023, it was just a little over 8,000 cases, right? 0.8. So what about 2024? 0.6, about 6,000 cases. As you can see, the transaction volume is dropping drastically. This has never happened since the actual transaction prices were made public. It's never happened before. Do you see it? This is such a serious matter. Looking at the building transaction volume data by year, it's clearly visible, right? So, what are we talking about? No one is even looking at it. No one is even looking at it. No one wants to buy. No one. Why? A few months ago, I went out to check properties for business purposes, and what I found on the market was just ridiculously overpriced. Who would want to make a deal? So this means that the property owners are still not lowering their prices and are just saying the obvious. This is Gangnam. So if you own a building here, it just keeps going up in value. This is all we can say right now. That's an old story. Everyone, the times have completely changed now. We have that saying, right? It's not the strongest person who survives until the end. The person who adapts well to change and survives until the end is the strongest person. So, what does that mean? In the past, property owners were really the strong ones, but that's not the case anymore. Property owners really need to change completely. And the people who are involved in building brokerage also really need to change a lot. I've met a lot of people through introductions and I've gone out to check properties with them, but they're just talking about old stories. Is a return rate of around 2% or low 3% really a reasonable return just because it's in Gangnam? In the past, interest rates were close to zero. It was okay in those days, but now the bank only gives you 3% interest, and if you deposit dollars now, you get 5%, so there is no risk of losing the principal, and I can receive 5% per year, but I have to pay acquisition tax. I have to pay this enormous acquisition tax. I have to pay property tax. And on top of that, it's so hard to fill the lease and all that. I have to pay a lot of brokerage fees too, but there's also the risk of losing the principal. Who would care? At the very least, if the bank gives you 3% interest now, you should get a return of 6 to 7%. When we think about it from a logical standpoint, isn't that the right investment? But when we look back at history, we see that many people have made wrong bets during the speculative frenzy and ended up in trouble. How many people got caught up in the speculative frenzy, investing in Chinese funds, US stocks, connecting buildings, apartments, and land, and ended up making bad decisions? Everyone. That's why it's really important for us to look at various pieces of data and view the overall market objectively based on that data. Making good decisions is crucial, but I think it's just as important to avoid making bad decisions. And if I may share some positive thoughts, I mentioned that starting this year, I would become quite the bull on the market. So I believe that starting in 2025, a tremendous opportunity is going to come, and this opportunity will likely arrive as early as the fall or end of 2025. So for those of you who are thinking about buying a building, here's how you can strategize. So how should you strategize? First, I will buy a building for the purpose of rental yield. First of all, I think this is risky. The times have changed now. Times have changed a lot. Now, I think it's very risky to only view buildings as an investment tool. Of course, if it's really cheap and has a good yield. The yields are at 7% or 8% and the prices have really dropped. That would be great. There's no risk of vacancies. So, you can invest for that purpose, but the situation is gradually shifting towards a decrease in demand for commercial real estate. The population is declining and we're also facing an aging society. So, unless it's really a good opportunity, I think it's better to be cautious if you're investing for that purpose. But that's a mistake. I'm running a hospital or I'm running a business. So I need an office building. For those who need a building, I encourage you to take a keen interest in it. And since it's important to buy at a low price, I believe the current slump in the commercial real estate market will continue until the end of this year and into next year. I believe there will be a significant price adjustment. And if you buy through these auctions, which are increasing even now, so what happens then? In that case, you can easily make tens of billions. So, if you buy commercial real estate at the right time and at a really low price, you can easily make tens of billions. I also have a very close friend who built a commercial building right next to a double-decker bus stop in 2017, and all the floors are now sold out. So, you won the bid for the first and second floors for less than 10 billion won, and just a few years later, it turned into several hundred billion won. Just from the monthly rent alone, it can be around 50 to 60 million won. I believe that such good opportunities will start to arise from the end of this year or around next year. So for those looking to buy buildings for actual use, I recommend you keep watching my broadcasts. I plan to offer consultations and advice on these matters soon, so it would be great if you could stay interested and wait for the right timing. Additionally, I want to mention that there's a cold wave hitting small buildings right now. Areas like Yeonnam and Seocheon are seeing a surge in quick sales. With the economic downturn and high interest rates, many businesses are closing down. I've heard that the vacancy rate in Sinchon has jumped to double digits. Don't you feel that? There are really a lot of vacancies. And if you think about it, there are quite a few areas that could be considered really good commercial districts. But when I go there in the evening, I see so many stores that are just empty. There are really a lot. That's why for those who are buying with a lot of loans, it can become a huge burden. So, it's really just a moment before a property owner could end up on the street. It's just a moment. That's why excessive leverage and buying buildings or any other assets during a time when everyone is shouting for a rise is extremely risky. It's extremely risky. So, I think the coins and US stocks in the market are at the peak of a bubble. Because right now, everyone is cheering and only those who have made money in this market exist. So, what happens when everyone is caught up in a sense of happiness? This kind of fire will come back again. I bet that those who bought buildings in 2020 and 2021 by pushing their limits or taking out a lot of loans never imagined that their properties would end up going to auction. Everyone must have had a positive outlook, but what happens? After 2 or 3 years, it can really lead to such incredibly bad outcomes. So, when it comes to investing, it's important to think not just about the current atmosphere, but also about what the situation will be like in 1 or 2 years. You should also consider how many investors will come in after me. Keeping these factors in mind, I think it's really beneficial to make well-founded, sustainable, and repeatable real estate investments. As a result, small buildings are continuously coming onto the market at lower prices. I believe that properties that were worth 8 billion won could drop by 3 billion won in just a year and start trading at around 5 billion won. I think we'll see more of these situations in the future. That's why those of you who own buildings need to be bold and lower your prices to make transactions. Otherwise, it will probably be difficult to make transactions. And also, building owners need to change their mindset. I think the time when just having the hardware meant you were a successful property owner is over. Why? The population has already decreased significantly. It's really not easy these days with the population declining, aging, and the economy in recession. That's why property owners need to have a service mindset. If I own a building, I should be able to provide clear reasons for tenants as to why they should choose to do business in my building instead of others. It's essential to give them a solid justification. That's how it should be. That way, it will be good for both tenants and property owners, right? That's why the era where property owners could just say, "I'm a property owner," and expect everything to go well is over. I believe that only those property owners who adopt a service-oriented mindset will be able to continue to grow and develop in the future. Everyone, the world is changing very quickly. We need to adapt well to this changing world. So, I think that's how we can continue to prosper and thrive. So, please don't just focus on the current situation. Think about how things might change in 1, 2, or even 3 years, and seriously consider how you can build your own competitive edge during that time. I believe that would lead to wise decision-making regarding real estate. Thank you.